This is Brad Markosky. He's the designer, builder, owner, and operator of the Midwest Central Railroad. Brad has a wealth of knowledge about prototype and model railroading. And even though you may get out of breath listening to him, we want you to hear what he has to say.
Well, our idea for this model railroad was to have a running railroad where you could switch cars out, pass trains, leave cars, pick up cars, leave cars. It just wasn't running around one direction. It wasn't just a jeweler's outfit like you've seen a toy train window somewhere along at some department store. You could actually do things with the real railroad just like they do, only you can do it better because you can see the whole railroad as a whole rather than just a piece of it. With all the subdivisions you got tied in here, each subdivision connecting with the other and none resulting in any dead ends, you can run complete trains from one to the other, and by the time you get it back from where you started from, it can take quite a period of time, quite a long time before you get it back. But if you have all the trains running like we have here, running it with this type of arrangement, their whole interpretation or orientation or philosophy of model railroading is much more beautiful. This is a hobby which you can enjoy when it's cold and miserable out here. Up in this part of the country, winters are rough and they're cruel. If it's raining here, you can always enjoy it inside there. You're healing from being ill or convalescing, whatever. It's a great hobby because no matter what happens outside, you can be downstairs having a great old time. And when you have it this big and this large, there's such a variation of operations, there's no boring to it because you get the same train twice going the same direction. Everything can be changed. You don't have to bring the same train back with the cars that you left with. Track curvature here is 36-inch radius. If you stretch 072 track, you can get 076 out of it, or 078 or 074 if you let it breathe. And that's what you see in a lot of curves here where the track has been allowed to breathe or it hasn't been configured or taken into its shortest radius of 36. So we work with 36, 38. 040 and the inside tracks are 036, some are 054, some are 064 like we have over there in the Four Ladies areas and the farthest parts of the region around the Abijo area. And this works real well with us because then all our major power can take all these curves without having to worry about tightness in the drivers or in the wheelbase. The bigger power taking the outside tracks and the smaller switching power and wave freight power taking the inside tracks, since the outside tracks are higher speed than the inside ones. Parts of the layout is quadruple track, some of it is triple track. Most of it is double track except for one piece which is 12 feet long between Bow Rivers and Ellis Crossing. And that's where there's single track and so the trains have to wait there. It can be quite a problem, especially if you get 2 or 3 steamers sitting there idling and smoke goes up to the ceiling, all of a sudden your smoke alarm goes on. It's a hands-on railroad. You have to do the switching here. You just can't push buttons. All the switching out in the country is done by hand-operated switches. Mainline switches for meeting passing trains is all automatic, controlled by the person at the transformers. But everything else is done by hand-operated switches. I started into model railroading in 1953. Had the first Lionel train set in our community where we come from, out western Canada. It was a Lionel Scout set with 2 cars, a 1615 engine and a little red caboose. A circular track, there was nothing else. There was no money for anything else, and that's what I used. We lived in a small community where the CN Railroad went through once a day, 4 days a week. The engines are very small, the trains are very short. We'd go down there and watch them, see who got off, see who got on, see what the latest motion picture packages were coming in for the theater, see the chicks and see the milk cans come back and everything, and watch the train switch out the yard. It started there in those days. And finishing school and college, what have you, I came out east with the family and then I went to work with the railroad out here. I've been on the railroad almost 30 years, hopefully to retire pretty soon. And this hobby I built up from that little set into what you see here. So this one is the 7th layout I've had, and it combines all the scenes of all the other 6. Improved, bigger switches, bigger track, better buildings, much more professionalism at it, better electronics, what have you. The availability of things that never were back in the 50s and the 60s as we have now, and this layout became a big thing. I've always enjoyed the hobby. All the buildings that were built for this thing were built and arranged first, and then the freight cars were purchased or built or arranged or obtained for the industries. There are no freight cars here that do not have an industry that they can be related to for shipping or movement of goods or services. It's no good to have freight cars being pulled by an engine if you have no place to put them. If you have an industry somewhere and you don't have an industry for the right car or a car for the right industry, what's the sense in hauling it? It's like the real railroad, but you don't haul equipment if you don't have no use for it. If it's dead and hauled, it's got to earn something. So the same thing with what we have here. All the industries are related to the kind of cars that the way freight's going to haul out, or the road switchers are going to bring in, or a through freight's going to leave, or a yard job's going to take out and leave for you if you're switching out an industry. The ice house in the Abigail area is modeled after the arrangement that used to be at Yakima, Washington, with the platforms as they were at Hood River, Oregon, as is shown in the Pacific Food Express book that came out some time ago by PFM. And it's built in 1/48, 1/4 inch. My good friend Leon Konetsky over in Batavia built that for me. It is a big, huge superstructure. It spans 4 tracks, holds 17 cars. It has all the woodwork and all the valves and the gauges and all the little tubes that come out that can funnel water if it was the real thing, plus the iceman on top. And all the people are done by artistic figures to suit that ice house. And it's a big project. There's a lot of switching there. It serves 4 tracks. It gets its water from the main reservoir of the water tower there where the engines stop. Served by its own section forces and built out of the offices of the Abigail station. And there's a lot of switching there. The platforms all work, and the various stairways and chutes for the ice are all there. Everything in detail as it's featured in that book. Took a long time to build and to install to get it right, and it's a beautiful piece. The John Deere Factory Works is modeled primarily after what used to exist in this area, and one of the factories that produces John Deere equipment and farm agricultural things. The buildings are DPM modulars, all put together in kits. Buildings Unlimited are some of the buildings. Over there in that Abigail area is a double signal bridge put together to span 4 tracks. The coaling dock tower over there is a model of the Allegheny coal tipple that came out no gauge. It was extended to cover 6 tracks instead of the 3. Extra bins and supports and coaling service facilities was added and built out of basswood and painted and lettered and put in there. The Buildings Unlimited detail parts are also put in there that you can put for miniature water towers on top of the building, artistic figures and such. There's some rail fans over there and some people watching trains. If you look at that when you can, you'll see all those things that exist on that holding dock. It's a beautiful structure, it's big, it's heavy, and it's something that most railroaders don't have because this thing spans 6 tracks with a 7th track for servicing cars. I show this thing to a lot of individual groups and service groups over the course of a year. They come here to see it, and they all enjoy it, and the kids come to see it, and the older folks come to see it. And it's a hobby which I hope to keep doing for a long time. I've done it for many years now. I'd like to continue with it. I have other interests, but this is the primary, number 1 hobby that I have. You know, we always end up here in the basement here after dinner or first thing in the morning. You come home from work, you get down here and you run trains 2, 3 in the morning or 10, 11 in the morning or whatever it is, all night sometimes. You get some of the old die-hard railroaders down here, you can't get them out of the house because they want to run trains. So before you know it, you go through everything. So I think this is going to be a great future for a lot of people who are into this hobby. I hope that this layout is going to give them some ideas and some incentives that will make it better for them and make them want to get into more than what they have, and use their own imagination and creativity to create something that we haven't seen. And there's a lot of talent out there, and maybe with this thing that'll make some of them come to the fore and start developing some of that talent and make it a better hobby than what we have been able to do it. Well, it's a learning tool. You learn how to build, you learn the construction of buildings, give you an idea how things are done, how the logistics of traffic works on the railroad, how transportation systems are set up, what the trains can do. Your model railroad has to do something, not just run around. What is your railroad designed to do? Service an industry, carry the goods from one place to the other, interchange with other railroads. Naturally, you're making money on the side doing it if it's a real railroad. But as a hobby, of course, you don't make money on this, but you create the aspect of a world of miniature railroading. And since you can see the whole thing as a whole, you can enjoy the hobby much better than wondering what's going to happen next. You can program it, you can do it as your own, and you can spend hours and hours with this thing and never really get tired of the same thing twice.
Brad has created a marvelous model railroad empire in his basement. The Midwest Central Railroad is always busy, moving passengers and freight from place to place. Local freights pick up cars from one customer and set them out at another as they keep the wheels of commerce well-oiled and turning freely. And all the while, Brad is thoroughly enjoying his great layout adventure.